The coronavirus, also known as the coronavirus disease, or COVID-19, or SARS-CoV-2, or SARS-CoV-2, or 2019 nCoV, or the novel coronavirus, has, well, taken a very strong grasp on our planet, especially on the human population. Not necessarily out of cases specifically, but mostly out of fear. Because, I mean, pretty much everyone knows about this virus at this point. As of now, there are 77,654 cases, 2,359 deaths, and 20,772 recoveries. The recoveries are up a lot from the last time I posted a video on this. I think the recoveries were only at 2,000, and there were 31,000 cases. So, yeah, there's been a vast improvement since then. There are currently 35 cases in the United States, only because there were changes in how the cases were counted. There are technically only 14 actual U.S. cases, but then there are 21 others where people were repatriated to the United States. And, well, stuff happened, obviously. There are 21 cases from repatriated citizens. That includes 18 from the Diamond Princess and 3 from Wuhan. So that's not a good thing. There were only 397 cases in China today, as of February 21st, when I'm first reporting on this. But the scary thing, and it might alert some of those WHO officials, there were 414 new cases outside of China. This means that there were more cases outside of China than there were inside of China. And that was exactly what we were trying to keep from happening. We were trying to keep it, well, I wasn't, but these health officials were trying to keep it from expanding to the point where the number of cases in other countries rises to the point where it is outlasting numbers of cases in China. They were trying to keep it contained specifically to the Hubei province, or even just China as in general. Wuhan has been reporting a very vast majority of the cases. I mean, I think it's 361 of the 397 were in Wuhan, or the Hubei province, and then all the others were in a few other provinces. It was they're 4 to 6 per province reported maybe every day, which is low, incredibly low, considering they used to be reporting 20 to 40 a day at some point. But yeah, the one reason for that was that the day before yesterday they changed how they wanted to record the new cases again, and that really, really sharply declined the number of new cases. You might have remembered, if you were following this a lot, you might have remembered that the number of new cases were kind of declining. It was getting to 3,000 a day, and then it kind of went down to 2,600, and then it was down to 2,100, and then 1,900, and then you had this 15,000. But that's because they were doing clinically reporting. So if you had symptoms, they're going to confirm you for it. So you didn't actually have to test positive. So that caused the 15,000 day. And then even with that, new cases per day went all the way down to 1,900. And then they changed it, and then it was down to under 300. There are only I think there were only 361 new cases yesterday. It was very low. It was a low number. So that's very interesting. Now, the largest of these out of China numbers that are very, very alarming and honestly shocking, South Korea. They've reported a lot of new cases in the last few days. They have 356 cases. They just reported 140 new cases in the last not that long ago. They just reported 140 new cases. Actually, no, they have 244. They have 344 new cases, not 356. My bad. But yeah, there are 356 new cases. In Japan, they have 105 cases, but that's excluding the Diamond Princess. So technically they have 739 cases, but still, I'm not going to necessarily count that. I mean, even Johns Hopkins counts that as other. Singapore would be third. They have 85 cases, and Hong Kong has 68. So yeah, this is not becoming great. I mean, it's kind of starting to spread. We're starting to see evidence. Well, not evidence, more than just evidence. We're starting to see very clear signs of community spread outside of China, and that was what we were trying to avoid in the first place. That's what humanity in general was trying to avoid, because the community spread is what we're like. The community spread outside of China is very, very alarming with a virus like this, a virus capable of infecting half the human population. But yeah. So another country that's had a lot of problems with this would be Iran. They just reported their first case on Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday, yeah. And then both of the first two cases were fatal cases, so they had 100% death rate at one point. But now they have 18 cases and 4 deaths, which is still an alarmingly high death rate, 22.5%, which is obviously alarmingly high because, I mean, the death rate, even without like every single case being reported, is like 2.5%, not even. So that's, of course, alarming. And yeah, it's just not a good situation there. And the reason why it's not a good situation there is because the country is so insanely underdeveloped. Like, they're not necessarily like in a really horrible they are in a really horrible situation, but they're not necessarily like an extremely poor country. It's just that they are very war ravaged, and they have there's frequent terrorism in the Middle East in general. So yeah, I mean that just makes it difficult for Iran to keep this contained, because I mean they have so many other problems to deal with. You'd think that a molecular strand of RNA would be one of the least of their problems, but look at that. Now they have 7 different communities on on pretty much opposite sides of the country that have cases of this virus. First 2 cases were in Qom, the holy Shia city of Qom, and I don't know what the other ones are. There was one in Tehran, but yeah, so that's not good. The people in the Middle East are typically going to be more susceptible to these respiratory diseases because they live in such insanely dry areas. I mean, like, Iran, don't get me wrong, Iran is very, very dry. And that causes susceptibility to specifically respiratory illnesses, because when dew points are lower, typically your respiratory system is not as strong, so it's more susceptible, of course, to those diseases. But yeah, there's some pretty well-known super spreaders right now. We all know about many of us know about the super spreaders from the SARS epidemic, which was something apparently everyone was scared out of their minds about. And yeah, so someone infected like 70 people with SARS in a hotel in, I think it was Guangdong province. But yeah, so this situation has been much worse because this disease is far more contagious. There are many instances of super spreaders. For example, you have the Diamond Princess. You start with 1 passenger contracting the illness, and now you have 634 cases of the coronavirus from people on that ship, and that does not include people repatriated from it. So that's not good. And then you have super spreaders in South Korea at the Temple of the Tabernacle of the Testimony, which is a doomsday cult parish. And there was one person that infected like I think it was like 140 people. Actually, it might have been more than that. And that was much more than what happened at SARS. And then there's a super spreader in Hong Kong. And that was, or no, not Hong Kong, Singapore. And that was also at a church. So the Christians that used to say, well, I mean, I think they're both Christian churches. The Christians that used to say, they used to say that viruses or like getting sick was a sin. Well, I guess they've committed sins. That's a joke, but like, yeah. So that's not good, of course, and they're now 10 times the number of cases for this virus than there were for SARS, and nearly 3 times as many deaths. That's of course alarming because I mean, SARS was like the only major. Well, SARS and Ebola would be the 2 very major epidemics that like really hit us. Other than this, now. It's more contagious. It's much more contagious. I mean, if it were not as contagious, you'd be seeing like 10,000, 14,000 maybe. You'd see like 4,000 maybe. But no, you got 76,000 because people care. Either people care way too little about it, like they're way too confident, they think they're going to be completely fine, so they do all this gutsy shit, or they are simply we just weren't prepared. We weren't prepared for it. But it's also less deadly. But it's only like 5 to 10 times less deadly. So I mean, it doesn't really make that much of a difference when it comes down to it. Because it's probably 175 times more powerful and 20 times more contagious. And, I mean, of course, this begs the question. I mean, all of this that I've already talked about, this begs the question. Is this beginning to justify a pandemic? Now, while there were more cases today in China, while there were more cases outside of China than in China, I do not say this supports a pandemic, because I think it has to be justified over a long period of time, and it really has to take a foothold. Like, I mean, okay, cool. South Korea has 356 cases. I wouldn't justify it as a pandemic until, like, Australia, for some reason, had, like, 1,000 cases. The United States had 6,000 cases. Or like Canada experienced 1,000 cases. Like cases were getting into the thousands outside of just Eastern Asia. Like Europe has been ravaged by this thing somehow. Like if Europe in general, like if overall Europe's cases reach like 10,000, then I categorize it as a pandemic. I'd say it's almost completely inevitable that this is going to become a pandemic. I'd say we're within 1-2 months of it becoming a pandemic. I don't think that it's going to spread community in the United States for another 3 to 4 months. But when it does, it's going to take a foothold on the United States and strain hospitals to the limits. And I mean it. It is going to strain hospitals to the limits. So I advise to you, please, if you get the virus and you are a young, strong, healthy person and you can weather it out on your own, don't go to the damn hospital. Just isolate yourself, and please don't infect anyone else. Because I mean, the problem was that we were affecting everybody else. There were so many super spreaders from this that there ended up being, I mean, nearly 100,000 cases. I don't expect there to be 100,000 cases for another 2 to 3 weeks, only because the number of new cases per day is transitioning geographically. So, like, there are many less new cases in China, which there will continue to be more cases, but I think that it's going to remain low. I think it's going to keep like going down to the point where it's below 100, because they'll probably shut their borders down at some point But then in like areas like South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, even Indonesia, which hasn't even reported a case yet, Australia, Japan, even North Korea, which for some reason hasn't reported a case, the United States, Iran, and everywhere in Europe, those cases are going to start to explode. They already are. I mean, you saw South Korea. They weren't even on the news about it. They had 81 confirmed cases when I woke up yesterday morning. Now they have 344. So, just remember, it's not over yet. Just because the new amount of new cases are going down doesn't mean it's over yet. It's still increasing, just not in the same place that it was. So thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed.